So welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today in this second episode of our new Sector Streams webinar. Today we're focusing on membership in uncertain times. So just a quick run through of the program, what we're going to do today. So I'll go through how we ask questions, introduce the panelists we have on for today. There'll be a short presentation and then we'll jump into the Q&A session. So asking questions, it'd be really nice if you could start asking them now. We've got Amber in the background. She'll be collating questions for us and then directing them to the panel. So if you go to the top right of your screen, there's a little Q&A button. If you press that, it'll give you a box to ask your questions in. If you could start putting those in there, that would be that would be great. Also, just to mention, please don't use the chat function because that comes up separately. So Amber will be going through the questions rather than the chat. So if you keep it to the Q&A section, that would be great. Thank you. So if we move on to the panel, today we've got Richard Dodd. Richard's a chartered ecologist and the managing director of Wildwood Ecology, an ecological consultancy and certified B corporation with offices in Wales and England. He's worked in a variety of sectors: public, voluntary, private, including Countryside Council for Wales, the Wildlife Trust, Bat Conservation Trusts, before moving into consultancy. He's also set up some small businesses, so has some experience there, and is happy to deal with questions around challenges for businesses, both success and failure. We have Darren and Ian, both from MFL Insurance. MFL provides insurance advice for CIEEM members under the trading name of CIEEM Insurance Services. They're here to offer advice today and help answer any questions you might have around professional indemnity, liability insurance, or office insurance. MFL have actually kindly put together some documents on insurance that we've added to the coronavirus web pages as well, under support for businesses, employees, and self-employed. So if you hadn't had a chance to go and have a look at those, they're really useful. They're on the website. And then you've got Stuart Parks, Head of Membership and Marketing from CIEEM, and myself, Jason Reeves, on the panel today. Richard has put together this useful slide on business thinking. Richard, I don't know if you want to say a few words on this before we move on.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jason. Yeah, this is something it's sort of a combination of things that I've been on in terms of other courses, but also my own thoughts as well. Most people have gone through the survive, acceptance, and hopefully we're in a stabilization sort of phase now, but it's interesting that we're focusing now upon what's known as the return and thrive phases. What I think we'll talk about a bit later on, if people want to ask a few questions about, is what does return look like, and are we really waiting for a return to normal, or are we getting ready to build something better? And I think that's a great opportunity to discuss a bit later on. Thanks very much.
So this slide will be available, the whole webinar will be available online in the resource hub. You'll be able to go back and have a look at this at any point you want as well. So that'll be there as a resource. And then moving on, we've got Stuart Parks, our Head of Membership and Marketing, wants to talk about what we're doing in terms of supporting the membership at this time of uncertainty. Stuart.
Thanks, Jason. Good afternoon, everybody. So as a membership organisation, a key priority for us when deciding how we would respond to the challenges of the current situation has, of course, been how we can best support CIEEM members, not only now, but also in the medium and longer term future. And our efforts have been focused in two key areas, really: gathering, interpreting, and disseminating as much professional advice and information as we can, with a particular emphasis on pressing for clarity, given the range of situations that members find themselves in. And then providing practical advice and support about how to deal with the personal impact of the crisis, and helping members that wish to put themselves in a better professional position for the continuing challenges that they will inevitably face in the coming months. So what does this look like in practice? So for some weeks now, we've been updating the dedicated COVID-19 pages of our website with the latest guidance and information from key organisations and UK governments. And when clarity has been needed, we've been pressing hard for clarity. These pages are updated pretty much daily, and CIEEM staff have been supported by senior members to interpret much of the guidance in order to produce specific advice for members and obviously for the wider profession. As part of this, some new advice about alternative approaches to ecological assessment with limited data available is being drafted now, and that should be available next week, I've been informed. And we've also been broadening the scope of our advice. So we're pleased to be joined today by Darren and Ian from McParl and Finn, who, as Jason mentioned earlier, have recently supplied some very useful insurance-related guidance, which we've added to the website. And in addition, yesterday, some legal advice about interpreting the rules around furloughing staff was added as a blog post on the website. The CIEEM professional development team has been working hard to devise and launch a restructured training program that can be delivered safely and remotely. And last week, we saw our first conference successfully delivered entirely online. And we're also pulling together whatever useful and free resources that we can find or we're made aware of from elsewhere and collating those on our website as well. It's good to see that members are making use of the subcontractors directory on the website in order to follow the advice we provided to deliver work with minimal travel. And there's already over 360 members listed in the subcontractors directory. So do take the opportunity to either opt in to be found or to search for members that you might be able to work with. The recently launched online mentoring platform has been getting much more use recently as members are looking for advice and support from their peers. And we've added a dedicated option related to support in the COVID-19 crisis, so that those specifically looking to get or provide advice on dealing with the current situation can find each other more easily. So please do register as a mentor or a mentee and make the most of that peer-to-peer support that's available. All members should by now have been informed about the Member Assistance Programme. This is a new online service which we brought forward in our plans, and allows members and their dependents to access advice and support resources on a whole range of issues, but particularly aimed at supporting things like mental health and resilience. And it's encouraging to see that some members have already been making use of the support, and some are already receiving and benefiting, hopefully, from the structured counselling sessions and support that's available from the trained people on the Member Assistance Programme. We've also had lots of requests from students that were suddenly left with final year projects to complete, but limited, if any, fieldwork options. So we've teamed up with NBN Atlas to connect members that have got data with students that need data. So again, do have a look on the website and consider providing some support for that if you can. And then finally, we've spoken to lots of medium and large employers recently, and they're encouraging their staff to take the opportunity to either become CIEEM members or to look to upgrade their membership, or indeed consider applying for chartership. I think many of them have recognised that this is still permissible, even for furloughed staff, as it's classed as personal development. So we're still open to receive applications at any time, and we'll be running a webinar on the upgrade application process tomorrow lunchtime. So the membership team, although they're all working from home, are still very happy to support members through the upgrade process, and including that to chartership. And we're also looking at the options we've got for subscription renewal, which is due later this year. And we'll be discussing the options with the governing board next month. And then we'll be letting members know as soon as we possibly can what has been decided around subscription renewal. So back to you, Jason.
Thank you very much, Stuart. So we'll move into the question and answer session now. I'll take us back to the panel. Let's go back here. So you should be able to see us now rather than the slides. And Amber, have you got some questions coming in?
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, we've got a few to start with. I think I'll come to Darren and Ian first. You can fight amongst you who answers which. So the first one is, how does business interruption cover work, and is it likely to cover the pandemic?
Shall I start with this one, Darren, or? Yeah, I mean, obviously different insurance policies all have different terms and conditions within them around business interruption cover. In our experience so far, I would suggest that any cover you're likely to find for business interruption would relate to increased costs of working. So we'd be talking there about any additional laptops or computer equipment you may have purchased to enable home working and things like that. It's very difficult to say on an individual basis whether a policy will actually respond to a claim, but best advice there really would be to keep records of any additional costs you have incurred and speak to your insurance advisor to discuss the possibility of making a notification on that basis. I don't know, Darren, if you want to add anything yourself to that. Or...
I think the thing to bear in mind is, unfortunately, the majority of business interruption policies are usually predicated on the basis that a physical act has occurred at your office or at your place of work. So most of them are aimed at the fact that your office has burned down, your office has been quarantined for some particular reason. So lots of them aren't really geared for our current conditions and current circumstances, and it wasn't envisaged by most insurers. So at this stage, while we're suggesting that yes, look to make a claim, discuss it with your insurance advisors, the position of insurers, generally speaking, at this stage is pretty unclear. They're all having to consider new set of circumstances that were never envisaged. Some policies are likely to try and flat out exclude this. Some policies, there may be some element of cover. But even in those cases, unfortunately, I suspect there's going to be no kind of a quick turnaround or quick fix to any of this. So it is a case of bearing in mind that if you do make a claim, it is likely to take some time before it can be resolved in any sort of way. But your insurance advisors, ourselves or anybody else, should be able to discuss with you what options you've got and what kind of position you're going to be in.
Thank you, Beth. Sort of a similar question, but I know we've been getting this quite a lot. Someone's asked, am I likely to be insured if a client sues me for refusing to go out and do their work? Am I in breach of contract?
Technically, you are still contracted to do the work, and there is nothing prohibiting you from doing the work that would probably trigger any sort of conditions in the contract. I would have said, in reality, discussing your concerns with the client should normally resolve most issues. If the client's actually still demanding, even if you have concerns about your and their safety, I'd worry about the client. Most people, I would have thought, in these kind of circumstances are taking a relatively reasonable stance with such things. But technically, yes, it could be viewed as a breach of contract, although whether or not that would be largely actionable from a public policy point of view would possibly be a very different question.
Okay, that's great, thank you. On similar lines then, this one's more for Richard. Do you have any advice on how to manage clients' expectations if they don't think it's possible to do any field work?
Expectations, yeah. So I think it's down to, I think a lot's what's been said is about communication with your clients. So having that conversation as early as possible. So as soon as you anticipate any action or a or no action at all, I think to inform your clients and being proactive about it. I think that's the best course of action. Any issues that arise, any problems that do arise from those conversations, I think it's discussing it with your team, keeping them informed as well. And of course, any sort of any legal aspects, it is consulting with maybe your own. Well, if you do have a solicitor, consulting with those, or from another peer-based group such as through CIEEM.
Thank you. So the next one is for Stuart. We are a registered practice. Will there be any additional marketing effort from CIEEM as the industry recovers?
Thanks, Amber. Yes, that's a good question. And the answer is yes. There's definitely some additional marketing effort being put into to the registered practice directory and registered practice status in particular. I believe all registered practices should be getting an email, possibly in fact today, to give them some more detail about that. But we've definitely got some editorial and some advertorial going into a number of related publications with circulation in the tens of thousands, things like Construction News, that are going out over the next few months, as and when their print deadlines and their deadlines arise. So most of that is, I think, actually going to be online, understandably, right now. But that does, of course, mean it gets more immediate exposure and is a lot more accessible. So yes, lots of effort being put into that, and registered practices should find out some more about that, if not today, definitely by the end of this week.
Thank you, Stu. So we've got another one for Richard, I think. I am an ecological clerk of works on a small construction site. I don't think the social distancing rules are being followed properly. What do I do? I can't afford to be difficult and lose the work.
Okay, you maybe also not afford to contract coronavirus either. So I think if something is, it's a very difficult position to be in. So I think one of the first course of actions, and I'm sure you've done this already, would be to raise it to your line manager. I'm sure that's been happened before, and it's the action of your line manager. It's responsibility then to take the course of action. If you are that person, if you are self-employed, I think then it's actually looking at certainly the site manager to have a conversation with them or their representative. But most importantly of all, if you feel uncomfortable at any point, I don't think you should withdraw. You should just say that I'm actually leaving the site. I don't feel comfortable. I think my health and safety is being compromised. I'm going to leave site, and here are my reasons why. Put that into writing. Make sure it's recorded and down as well. So if there's any action that comes back, or any sort of action that comes back to you, you've got a record of that activity and justify it to any sort of challenges that may come your way. But I think it's a very difficult position to be put in, and I think at the utmost, I think it is to make sure that that action is recorded. But your health and safety is paramount on that side. Hope that helps.
Yeah. So the next question for Jason. Has CIEEM approached the Welsh Government for similar advice to that seen from DEFRA in the letter, and will you be providing any more advice as to whether we can do surveys safely or find other ways of doing survey work?
Yeah, so there's two things that are wrapped up in that. So one is we've had a letter from DEFRA about ecological work in England. Northern Ireland have published something similar as well, saying broadly that ecological work can continue as long as it's done safely. We've approached Welsh Government, Scottish Government and Irish Republic Government as well, actually, on this to see if they will clarify their positions in the same way. We haven't heard anything back yet, but we are picking that up. So we will let members know as soon as there's any clarity on that. They should continue to follow government guidelines, though, in the interim, and we have provided guidance on how to undertake fieldwork safely. If they intend to do so at the moment for members. And then the second part of the question was about more advice. So there is that advice note we've already got that's been published. We've updated that a couple of times with tweaks. We are working, as Stuart mentioned earlier, about on alternative approaches to ecological survey and effort at the moment. So we understand that there's been an interruption to this season. And so there may not be as much survey data available. So we've got a group of very senior members and specialists working on some advice on how and what can be collected and what decisions could be made with that information. And we're hoping to publish that sometime next week. So it's just being finalized at the moment. But yes, there will be something new coming on that as well.
Thank you. The next one will be for Darren and Ian. If a member of my team gets COVID-19 whilst working, can they make an insurance claim against me?
Theoretically, yes. That would fall, if it's an employer, that would fall under employer's liability insurance. It would probably be difficult for them to establish that you as the employer are the cause of the infection. So there'd be a causal argument in the defense of any claim, but yes, they are capable of making that kind of claim against you, and your insurance would be there to assist in the defense of it.
Okay, thank you. The next one then is for Stuart. As a furloughed member of staff, can I still access CIEEM support and activities if my employer pays my membership fee?
Thanks, Amber. Yes, as far as we're aware, as a furloughed member of staff, it's still entirely permissible to carry out what's classed as personal and professional development. So it would be straightforward enough to carry on using the benefits of membership, accessing the training program, looking at the things like the competency framework, the self-assessment tool, identifying some training opportunities that might be useful from the outputs from the self-assessment tool, for example. And then, as I mentioned earlier, looking particularly at upgrading membership or even applying for chartership. And we're getting lots of upgrade applications coming in at the moment. Obviously, I can't tell if all of those people are furloughed, but as far as we're aware, it's entirely permissible.
Thank you. So the next one is for Richard. Is there a risk that by doing field surveys, we will upset the public or local residents?
Good question. I think there's a lot of different. I mean, this plays into wasn't it? Your mindset, both mindset of the person undertaking the survey and being on site and seeing to be doing something different, and obviously the what's going for, also the mindset of the person observing as well. So you can never be too sure of what other people's sort of levels of risk are, but I think with the reassurances we've had from Public Health England and also from CIEEM themselves, and also I don't know if the person asking the question is an employee or they're self-employed, and the levels change depending on the sort of role. But if you're employed, I think you should also have the confidence of your employer going forward. And so maybe one thing we've done for our employees, I don't know if this will help at all, is actually to issue, and it's just a small certificate, just a piece of paper with that information from Public Health England on it and the links. It's on a PDF, so you can use it on your phone. It's got the links to both the Public Health England and to the CIEEM website there, just to give a reassurance to anyone that may question it. But surely, you wouldn't, it depends if you're stopped by a member of the police, for instance. If it's a member of the public, then clearly, it's observing those 2 meter that distance there, so maybe not be able to find to show them your phone with those links on, but to refer them back to both the public health guidance for business outdoors. I think that's I think it's a difficult position to be put in. If you're self-employed, again, there's different levels of risk associated with you are maybe the sole employer, a sole person within your company, and I think it's down to the individual to make that assessment. But if you're an employee, you should have the backing of your employer.
Thank you, Richard. The next question is for Jason. We carry out practical habitat management on sites and maintenance work. The CIEEM guidelines on survey work do not cover this. Does CIEEM have any plans to produce guidelines on doing practical work on nature reserves, etc.?
So the short answer is no, but we can certainly raise that with the working group. I think that, so I don't know which country you're in. If it's England or Northern Ireland, you should be able to continue with that work. As the guidance say that ecological work can continue provided you respect the health guidelines as well, the social distancing and all of that. For England, there's also the outdoor business guidelines that have been published by government. We can certainly take that back to the working group though and see if there is value in producing something along those lines. But certainly if you're working in England and Northern Ireland, you'd be able to do that. I understand there's probably it's a bit trickier for the other devolved countries of the Republic of Ireland. Yeah, sorry, I can't be more clear on that.
Thank you, Jason. The next one is for Darren and Ian again. Going forwards, should we assume insurance premiums will go up?
That's a very tricky one to answer. Not necessarily, no. I think particularly on the CIEEM members scheme, that's fairly well insulated from sort of outside market influence when it comes to things like this. But obviously that does get reviewed with insurers fairly regularly. But as things currently stand, I don't feel that there's specifically anything to be too concerned about in that respect right now. And anything else to add on that, Darren?
In reality, the insurance premiums tend to be based on not only what kind of claiming experience you've got, but the nature of the work you're undertaking, the fees you're earning in any particular given year. As a result, it is never really a case of we can say your premium will be X or Y at any given point, because how things will look at the time of your renewal, it may be very different than they are right now. In a lot of cases, maybe there may not be as much work around as there was to begin with, which might suggest there could be some slight reductions. But again, if a lot of people are making claims, which is likely, that may also have an impact in a, unfortunately, more upward direction. So at this point, it is still far too early to tell what kind of impact any of this situation is going to have on insurance premiums going forward. Sorry.
Yeah, definitely. It's too hard to predict, unfortunately, at this stage, what impact, if any, it's likely to have on premiums. One thing we are seeing at the moment is a lot of insurers at renewal sort of querying what measures practices are taking to continue working during the lockdown period, etc. So that as far as possible, sort of standard working practices are being maintained. But I think that for the time being, at least, is essentially what you'd call a sort of box ticking exercise by underwriters. To be honest, I don't think that's something to be too concerned about either, really.
Okay, thank you. The next one is for Jason. Is there any danger that whilst everyone is distracted by COVID-19, the government will use the opportunity to weaken environmental legislation?
Thanks, Amber. I suppose there's always that risk in the background. I think our governments are quite busy at the moment engaging in addressing the coronavirus issue. So I think they're pretty busy. Sort of in the background with the legislation, things like the Environment Bill and the Agriculture Bill, that is for England, but similarly elsewhere, have been delayed, and consultations on those have been delayed. So the parliamentary work and scrutiny and the phase as they go through Parliament have also been delayed. We haven't got a restart time for them yet. So there are things that are on hold at the moment like that. There are some things we know are continuing to move along slowly, and we are engaging with those. I don't think there's an overarching risk of necessarily weakening environmental legislation that wasn't already there previously. I think our governments are pretty busy. They've got their hands full.
Thank you, Jason. The next one is for Richard. Any tips for helping staff make the best use of their time, if they have any spare time, whilst restrictions are in place?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things people can do depending upon where they are, where they find themselves. So let's deal with people who actually maybe furloughed at the moment or unfortunately made redundant. There are opportunities now to, well, let's start with the simple ones, to create your own to have a look at exactly what you want from, going forward, really. So do you want to carry on, if you are furloughed, do you want to carry on working with the employer you're working with? Why the reasons why you're working with that employer? And maybe looking at other opportunities, other areas to get into. If, I think there's a great opportunity then to actually review what's known as, review what's known as your why. Why do you do the things you do? And I think that's a great opportunity to explore that. And I can actually put on some tools to actually some questions that you can ask yourself going forward then of defining your own purpose. And they're great, really handy tools to use whatever stage you are. Of course, there's in addition to that, getting your CV up to date. If you are looking at also educational wise, so looking at some, read some great books. So I've got a few behind me here. So it depends on what you want to do. If you want to look at ecology, there's plenty of ecological books out there. But if you want to develop yourself into sort of a manager and leader, that's a great opportunity to do so. I think in majority of jobs, majority of industries, there's going to be an opportunity there to look at both management and leadership. And now's the time to actually become a greater leader. That's what we're looking for here. So a few little tips to go on to. The people I find really interesting are Simon Sinek. So have a look at his Finding Your Why. Great link there onto YouTube. There's a great one also. His name is Jim Rohn. Rohn is spelled R-O-H-N. Now, this was back in the 1960s, but if you go onto YouTube and look up for Jim Rohn and have a look at him, he defines his why, his purpose there. So he goes through 4 questions: why, why you, why not now? And so there's really good questions to ask yourself there. Podcast wise, have a listen out for, I think there's Nick Bradley. Nick Bradley is an excellent Scale Up Your Business one there. Other podcasts, and now he's a Marmite on this one, but Rob Moore, progressive entrepreneur, look at there. So there's podcasts to have a look at, listen to, YouTube videos to have a look at as well. It's just for self-development. There's a hell of a lot you can actually do now to get your CV up to standard and making those differences. And I think in the next 10 years, I think what we're going to see is a change of how people are employed and what people are looking for in terms of those skills as well. And I can go into a bit more detail into what's known as the 4 mega trends that are coming over the next 30 years that we all need to be aware of in every industry.
Great, thank you, Richard. I've got another question in for Jason. This is sort of related to the question about whether we've approached Welsh Government for advice. So I work in Wales. I'm taking the stance that no internal inspections for bats can be done if the property is occupied. I can't see any information on the Welsh Government website. Do you have any guidance?
So I think, first of all, I think that's the right approach, given the circumstances. The Welsh Government guidance, I suppose, isn't meant to be prescriptive right down to that level. So there is a certain amount of judgment that needs to be made. If you go and have a look at our website, there is a page on responses from the statutory nature conservation bodies and others. There is some information on there from Welsh Government and from NRW. I can't remember off the top of my head if it includes down to that level of detail, but it is worth going to have a look. It's not in our guidance, as it were, though. I don't know, Richard, you also work in Wales. Is this something that you might be able to come in on?
Yeah. I say we're both offices in England and Wales. I'm afraid we haven't got. I can't speak for anything in Scotland, Northern Ireland, or Ireland. But in terms of our approach is the same across both England and Wales. You're right. We know we don't enter properties that are occupied or will be occupied at the present. I think it's we have a simple risk assessment, and again, I'm happy to share that with people. Our sort of approach there. In fact, it's on our website. If people want to look at wildwood ecology, there's a downloadable sort of our statements and policy on there, and it covers a lot of things from even accessing, going to site, going on to site, and coming off site as well, accommodation and so forth. But in general, yeah, I think it's down to, if you were an employer, to make those decisions on behalf of your staff, looking after your staff. And if you're self-employed, it's looking at current guidance as well. And in Wales, I think we've just mirrored the ones in England.
Thank you both. So we've got another question for Darren and Ian. What is the best way to protect a business from loss of income due to a situation like this?
Darren?
Well, I don't think anybody can really give you tips for how to protect your loss of income for a situation like this, because there never has been a situation like this. There'll probably be general commercial advice in terms of how best to sort of manage your resources and your capital basis. In terms of an insurance position, again, given how the nature of most insurance products are based, there's probably not much you could have done in terms of loss of income for this kind of situation. There's not much you can do to prevent a client from suddenly deciding they're not going to proceed with a project because economically they're not in a position to continue on anymore, which is unfortunately what we're probably going to see a lot of over the next few months. Projects are going to be suspended, works are going to be cancelled because either they're not confident that work will restart, or given their own financial position, not in a position to continue forward. But there's not really much you as a firm can do to protect yourself from those kind of events or circumstances. So I don't think there really is much from an insurance perspective we can advise or recommend to sort of protect yourself going forward.
Thank you, Darren. Richard, was there anything you wanted to add to that as well?
Yeah, I don't know, but well, in protection, I mean, it's hindsight is a wonderful thing, but going forward, perhaps you need to look at your cash flow and having that resilient bank account. So you try not to live hand to mouth, and that's very difficult. It's easy to say and very hard to do. I think cash flow. There's two things that kill a business. It's cash flow and then not having a viable proposition, not having a viable service. So if you can ensure that you are keeping a really good buffer in your cash, and to get that, it's making it one of your objectives for the year going forward. I say it's easy to say now, but if you come out of this, make sure that you do ensure that one of your objectives for the year is to get a buffer of X amount of months. So we try to work on a basis of 3 to 6 months of pure cash within our bank, which we do not touch, ring fenced. And so it helps, but also looking at those schemes that are coming through. So yeah, you've got the go for grants. That's an easy one if you have an office there. Looking at changing your terms and conditions on your contracts as well. So we went from having 30-day credit terms to looking at getting straight into having cash up front, negotiating with your suppliers. I mean, it's maybe not every supplier you need to do this with, but looking at your suppliers, your key suppliers, can they extend terms? In terms of rental, we've managed to get a 50% reduction in our rent over a 3-month period deferred. So that's really helped us. And because we've got 2 offices, we've replicated that in both. It's having conversations with those suppliers, having conversations with everyone you need to, informing your clients as well, and your existing clients, and saying everyone's in the same position. So do expect there's going to be obviously a bit of there's going to be self-preservation there, but it is discussion, communication at every single stage, and being honest with your clients and being honest with your employees as well. But build up that cash reserve if you can when you're going forward.
Brilliant, thank you both.
Can I just add in there quick, Amber? That's really good advice from Richard. More broadly though, so we have put together a range of links to the government support and a few other support mechanisms on the CIEEM website. So if you go and look under the coronavirus web pages, there's one on support for businesses, employees, and the self-employed, I think it is. So there's a few other links there if you want to have a look for some more information. Thanks.
Thanks, Jason. Jason, another question for you, coming straight back. I attended last week's online Irish conference. Are there any more plans to do further online conferences, given that that one went well?
So yes, so at the moment in the pipeline for the summer, there is our Action 2030 group that Amber so ably steers on climate change and climate adaptation. So that group, together with our ecological restoration and habitat creation special interest group, are working on a conference plan at the moment for the summer. And then we have our usual national conferences. So at the moment we're working on a Scottish and a Welsh conference for October, November. There's a bit of uncertainty as to how they will work. At the moment we're still planning for them potentially as physical conferences. If need be, there will be online conferences like the Welsh one as well. And then our annual conference at the end of the year, the usual autumn conference, has been slightly pushed back into the very early December. We're hoping that will be a physical conference by the time we get to that point, but who knows. The topic for that one though is we'd chosen it even before all of this coronavirus, the pandemic started, on change, and that was in change in practice, change in technologies, change in legislation and policy. So that'd be a really interesting conference by the time we get to that point, given the current circumstances as well. So yes, lots of things in the pipeline.
Thank you, Jason. So we've only got 2 more questions left, unless anyone else would like to send any last minute ones in, and they're both for Stuart. So Stuart, can you tell us a bit more about the Member Assistance Programme? How do I use it? What's it for?
Sure, thanks Amber. Yeah, the Member Assistance Programme was something that we were thinking about introducing for some time, but when the current situation started to unfold, we worked with the Governing Board to bring those plans forward very quickly. So it's now been launched. It's in partnership with an organisation called CLC, but the website itself is well online. It's available for members. If you go into the CIEEM website, into the My CIEEM area, there's a whole section under member benefits for the Member Assistance Programme, which provides the hyperlinks to get to the online resources, as well as the login details that you need as a member. There's a whole bunch of resources on a range of topics. I was just having a browse. There's a whole range of topics on work life, including information about furloughing employees, equality and diversity, redundancy. There's a whole bunch of resources around your home life and relationships and family and coping with the current situation more generally. There's a section on mind and body and resilience and health and anxiety in particular. And there's also some sections around legalities and also money, including things, just thinking about some of the previous questions around saving, budgeting, debt management, and that kind of stuff. So it's resources based online, but there's also access to an advice line. So you can access telephone support, and if necessary, you can also have some structured sessions of counselling with a trained counsellor. So you'd work through the telephone support, and if agreed that actually you'd benefit from some counselling, then I think it's up to 8 sessions per topic are available to members, and importantly to members' dependents as well, so that you can gain some professional support on things like mental health and well-being, anxiety, resilience, as well as some of those practical areas, as I mentioned earlier on. So the login details are available through the My CIEEM area of the CIEEM website. And as I say, we've brought it forward, and it's encouraging to see that people are making some use of it already. So I really hope that proves to continue to be beneficial.
Thank you, Stu. And then the last question is, could you just briefly explain how to use the competency framework self-assessment tool?
The self-assessment, another online gadget that we've brought forward. So the self-assessment tool is available on the website. It's an open access, it's not member only. So in essence, it's a series of questions which have yes/no responses, which are aligned to the specific requirements for each of the competencies within the competency framework. So once you've just registered with an email address to use the self-assessment tool, you can choose to answer some questions based on just one of the 40 competencies, all 40 of them, or anywhere in between. And it stores information so that you can go back and see your progress as you go along. But basically, you answer some yes/no questions around particular criteria for specific competencies, and then it will give you an indication of the level of competence of those 4 levels that are within the framework that it would suggest that you're currently working at based on your responses. It's not telling you that you're competent in those areas. It's not confirming competence. It's saying this is where your answers are suggesting you're working. And the level that you're working at. And you can do that for, as I say, for each of the competencies. So we'd really encourage people, particularly looking to take advantage of this time now to upgrade membership, thinking about the probable audience we've got now, but also for non-members or maybe staff of some of you that are listening right now that you would encourage to become members. We'd really like to encourage you to make use of that tool. It can very quickly narrow down the framework for you. Provide some very clear indications of areas of strength as well as areas for development that you might want to look at further training in. But it would definitely give you some outputs that would give you a steer towards the application process. And as I mentioned earlier, I think we've got another webinar tomorrow lunchtime on the upgrade process. And we're particularly keen to support people and members right now to make the time and take the opportunity to think about upgrading and also applying for chargeship so that you're in the best possible position. I think picking up on something Richard mentioned earlier, when you're looking at your professional development and your CV and what you might do right now, if you've got some spare time, that's definitely one thing that you could be doing. So yeah, that's how that works.
Brilliant, thank you, Stu. So no other questions have come in. I'll keep an eye on it until we're done. But yeah, that's it from me.
That's great, thank you, Amber. So that is, I mean, we were aiming these sessions to be 45 minutes to an hour. So that's on the sort of 46 minutes. So that's really great. So just a real thank you from me to the panel. It's been really great having you today. Thank you very much. Let's just pop up this last slide quickly. Yeah, so just a big thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your questions. Thank you to the panel and to Amber and Christy in the background also helping us out today. We hope today's been really useful and informative for you. As I said at the start, this has been recorded, so we will put this on the resource hub, so you'll be able to go back and check it. We'd really like your feedback on today, whether you found it useful, and also suggestions for future topics. As I said, we're running this as a series now on regular intervals. So any feedback or anything, future topics you'd like us to cover, please do send those into inquiries@ciem.net. Yes, thank you very much.